We have another young Indian with us today as part of the Voice of the Young segment. Hello, everyone. Good to be back. Let's listen to him. Over to you, Adrij. The name is Adrij Chakraborty. I forgot to say it. So sorry. But here, over to you, Adrij. Please start.
Hi, Dr. Mathur. It's great to be here. And I would want to start off by formally introducing myself and what I do, where I'm from. And then I would go on to talk a little bit about my research, what I'm doing, what I'm interested to do in the near future, and also what my aspirations would be in the distant future. So my name is Adrij Chakraborty. I happen to be from Kolkata in India. I did my bachelor's in economics from the University of Calcutta. And then I went on to do my first master's from the University of Edinburgh. I did my master's in financial economics. And then I had a little break in between. This is 2017, so right in the wake of Brexit, I believe. Came back to India, worked with the University of Mumbai as an economist. And then I found this attraction towards policymaking. So there was a jump from finance to policymaking during 2018 or 19. And finally, I finished my project with the University of Mumbai. And then I went back for my second master's. And this time it was on policymaking in Germany. So I studied policymaking at the University of Jena, which is a very small town. It's known for its left-leaning politics, progressive mindset. And of course, Karl Marx went there to do his PhD. So from the place where, you have mostly neoliberal economics, Adam Smith, and more, I would say, more capitalistic economic doctrines at Edinburgh, all the way to Jena, which is a very interventionist, socio-democratically liberal, politically more left-leaning campus in Jena. It's been quite a journey. And I finished my second master's in about 2021. And then I worked a little bit in the industry in Germany. And then I got an offer from the University of Luxembourg, where I currently am. And I am now I'm almost about to finish my first year of PhD here.
Quite a journey, I must say. I've
Yes,
not yet met anybody who studied in Luxembourg, so you are the first. So tell us about it.
Well, hopefully not the last. I mean, this is one of the things that I wanted to also talk about, the positioning of the university here. And this is in no way an advertisement to for the department, but I'm really glad that I'm placed here at this point in time where Luxembourg is kind of this. I'd like to call Luxembourg the country equivalent of a startup, because everything is fresh, the ideas are new, people have carried their experiences from different countries to this, and they have started working on a gamut of subjects, including but not limited to migration, financial settlements, banking, and of course, labor economics, something that I deeply resonate with. And at the same time, Luxembourg kind of offers you a fresh perspective, because the people here have had their own set of economic theories and beliefs where they have come from. Most of them are from France and Germany, because Luxembourg is such a small country that it is almost always the second mover, right? So it never has the first mover advantage. And I feel in some ways, being the second mover is also an advantage in this case, because the tax rates are low, the lifestyle is high end, but at the same time, it's a wonderful place to explore, both in terms of your spending pockets as well as from a travel or touristic perspective. And I would invite Dr. Mathur to just interject at any point of time whenever he feels.
Yeah, I will, but I'm fascinated. I'm just listening. Do they have what is the local language, if any?
The local language is Luxembourgish.
Ah,
My untrained ears, it sounds a little like German, but people generally speak French here because it's very close to the French borders. In fact,
yeah.
where I live, I jog to France and come back to Luxembourg.
Okay.
But everything is super close by. The nearest city to Luxembourg nearest German city to Luxembourg would be Trier, where Karl Marx was born. And it's actually a pretty unique country in a lot of ways, because you have Belgium on its top left, you have Germany to its right, and you have France at the bottom. So cross-border migration happens to be a very big thing. And I think Luxembourg is one of those countries where you have a fluctuating population, because I think it's about 600,000 natives. And during the daytime, you get a surplus of another, I think 400,000 or something. I might be botching up the figures. So
Okay, it's all right.
okay. But it has a fluctuating population. And also, I think Luxembourg is relatively less discovered because the university is quite new. It was established in 2003, I believe. And the departments are quite fresh in terms of what they want to do. For example, I am affiliated with not just the university, which is where I am, but also to this institute called the Luxembourg Institute of Socioeconomic Research, or called LISA. We call it LISA, where you work on labor markets, you work on urban development, mobility. I myself am placed at the DTU, which is the doctoral training unit called ACROSS, and it stands for cross-border migration, cross-border mobility, and looking at the outcomes of human mobility, both in the labor market and for themselves, right? So there's a socio as well as an economic perspective to cross-border mobility. And that is exactly what I'm trying to do as a part of my research as well.
Mm-hmm.
So my research is mostly based on Germany, because I've been working on the German economy. I've been working with German data for about 4 years now. And I come from a very applied microeconometrics school in that sense, because I'm mostly engaged with causal inferences, applied microeconometrics in labor markets, not particularly holding up to the theoretical standards, but I'm more of an empirical person myself, because I kind of feel that it has this, this very tangible proof mechanism that theory sometimes might lack, especially in the moving world, where you have ideas more often, but then you can't substantiate these ideas, and that kind of causes a little bit of problem. So me and my team, well, I am part of that team. We are engaged in researching more about what are the various outcomes of cross-border mobility. I, for example, look at the labor market. My colleagues, they look at integration of refugees, integration of asylum seekers, at the same time, integration of migrants who have come to Luxembourg or who have come to another country of their choice in their research. And what are their outcomes in terms of real wages, in terms of integration in the workspace, racism, and all of that.
So is there like a emerging European labor market? Is cross-border mobility, meaning, there are countries, border means they're countries, but is it the case now that there's great mobility across borders in where you are?
Absolutely. In Luxembourg, I would say so. In bigger countries like the Netherlands, Germany, or France, who are, I would say, kind of a power driver of the European Union as a whole, you see massive shortages of labor, especially skilled labor and unskilled labor, but because it's a first world country in a sense, so they're driven by labor from a certain section of the distribution, and that tends to be to the right of the distribution, right? If you map the skill distributions.
So but language remains a barrier, or no? Because German, you are working on German data, so you have to know German, right?
Well, I know a little bit of German. I know just about enough to make do with the data, but then German data is bilingual. So I just have to switch off the German and switch on the English on the
Okay.
data set. And
All right.
I could
So,
work on it.
okay. So,
But I think what is more important for me is the fact that I need to know the German economy, not from the perspective of a tax-paying resident, but also from the perspective of a researcher, right? And that's more important because it's a very complicated country, and at the same time, the regulations are very laxed, right? So there's a huge risk of spillovers in terms of compliance. So the security area for Germany is, in some way, I would say it's more lax than most of the countries that talk about national security. And that's a good thing because they allow more people to come in and work for them. And that is essentially what is helping Germany grow as an economy. The same applies to Luxembourg, which I personally would think would be a more deluxe version of Germany and a more small pocket size Germany in that sense, because the economy is very similar to that of Germany. The language and the culture are very similar to France. So it's a hodgepodge of cultures in a sense. And that kind of makes it more conducive for researchers like me to exploit these, heterogeneities that exist within the countries to, to find out what is going on in the labor market. And in some ways, I think a lot of research has been done on Germany. So that kind of makes it a little challenging for me to, carve out a niche for myself, to look at the research questions that are yet to be answered, and at the same time to appreciate the research that has already been done and to find ways how to find newer pastures to graze on. And that is something that I'm currently working on to establish a research question that is all encompassing, that would help my PhD go forward. Yeah. And at the end of the day, to create a product, a research product that would have a lot of, like, a good amount of external validity, so that I can use it not just to inspect Germany as a nation state, but to inspect Germany as a laboratory, and then I could make further far-reaching conclusions based on that.
So you're not taking any courses now, you're just doing your dissertation?
No, so the system here is a lot like the US. So for the first 1 or 2 years, you are required to take courses. Of course, nobody would force you if you don't. I, for example, have focused more on teaching. I'm teaching causal inference to master's and bachelor students. Well, bachelor students, I'm teaching econometrics, but to the master student, they're kind of warming themselves up to causal inference, something which is very interesting for my mind. And yes, other courses, summer schools, I'm doing workshops and trying to learn as much as possible. But my focus generally has been towards causal inferencing, because I divided my entire research in 2 parts. I divided it between matter and method. Mm-hmm. And the matter for me would be a little more straightforward, because I've been interested in labor economics since my bachelor days. Right. Okay. So I've been relatively more consistent, as opposed to some other people I know who have, just chanced upon economics as a subject. So it was a long drawn plan right from my school that I would go into economics. I would study a particular subdiscipline of economics. I didn't know if it would be labor economics, but at the end of the day, it happened to be that, because interestingly, when I was writing my bachelor thesis, it was 2015, I believe. And that was the time when Chancellor Merkel famously said, "Wir schaffen das," which means we can do this. And this was the time, of course, when a lot of people from Syria, Eritrea, even Pakistan, they came into German borders. They claimed asylum there. And this was, of course, the Syrian refugee crisis in 2015. So I was always very interested in looking at what politics might teach economics and vice versa. But then I think politics teaching economics would be more of an input mechanism, and economics teaching back to politics would be more of an output mechanism, right? So in that sense, I took inspiration from Chancellor Merkel's words, and I wanted to look at how exactly, and a very baseline model of 2SLS-IV. I tried to look at what the effect of these inflows would have on the real wages of the natives.
Yeah.
It was a very clean design. It was actually, it had a significant effect, and I was happy. I was finally happy that I could understand something beyond the purview of theory, because theory and mathematics always seemed a little bit daunting to me. And in that sense, statistics really helped me, move past that fear. And this is something that I'm also working on right now, because I am working towards, transcending conventional statistics, going into causal inferencing, which is, I would say, a relatively more intuitive place of statistics, at least to my mind, and then progressing from there all the way to machine learning and trying to inspect how machine learning can inform policy decisions. And that would be where my research would be headed, perhaps by the end of my fourth year.
So nowadays you have to know computer stuff in order to be a good economist, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you need to deal with all these new technologies that are coming. Good. Okay. And it's a very fascinating story. You've been to 3 different countries and you still haven't got your PhD. People would say, what's going on here? But
Well,
I guess you
yeah.
are a devoted learner. That's it. Okay.
Yes, I mean, I started doing my PhD rather late into my 20s. I started doing it last year, because when I graduated from the University of Edinburgh, I had a finance degree and I had no knowledge of policymaking whatsoever. So I believe that the jump from finance to policymaking would be a little difficult, but then I was done with finance. I had no interest in finance whatsoever, and I wanted to move into a space where I could be more interested. I mean, this was the case when I wrote my thesis on migration at the University of Edinburgh, and my professor was actually quite surprised that I studied finance throughout the year, and then I wanted to do my thesis on migration, and that to the labor aspects of migration. So I found it to be very useful to go back to India and to learn policy making right from the start. So I joined this project that was run by the Mumbai School of Economics and Policymaking. It's called the Mumbai School of Economics and Public Policy, the MSEPP, wherein they were looking at a very interesting project. They were looking at water as a source of, as a common resource, right? So they wanted to see if unionization would help, unionization around water resources would help in improving farmers' livelihoods in terms of improving their real income. And what we found out was that unionization did really help. And we carried out this. So there were 2 phases to this project. The first phase was more of a campaign phase, and the second phase was going towards a randomized control trial. So the campaign phase was to make the farmers aware that they have rights and they could unionize. They have a right to unionize, and collective decision making would generally trump individual decision making. And when they decided to unionize around the water resources, we call them water users association.
Yeah.
And in that sense, we tried to understand if we could tackle the tragedy of commons by unionizing around common resources. And that kind of paid off pretty well. So using that sort of this RCT, that got me attracted towards ground level policymaking, just blanket policymaking in terms of touching people's lives. So that's exactly when I decided to, go away from this university campus to Germany, specifically Germany in Jena, because I really like the formal, the formalization of policy making that Jena carries. And the program was really nice. So whatever I did in Mumbai, I could learn about it and more from my university in Germany, right? So in a way, paved the path for me to not only understand RCTs better, but to also get into stuff like synthetic control methods, diff and diff, instrumental variables to augment my knowledge on these things and to really understand what it means to be a policymaker, an evidence-led policymaker.
Okay.
And the cherry on the top was also the 2021 Nobel Prize win by David Card, Joshua Angrist, and Guido Imbens. And that was a huge validation for a couple of students who would want to, push the state of the art for evidence-led policymaking. And that's what led to a surcharge in my interest.
Okay, wonderful. It's a great journey. Any tips you want to add for juniors who might be watching this?
Well, yes, I would say that don't be afraid to dream big, right? Because that's exactly what I tried to do. I mean, I've jumped boats from finance to policymaking because I dare to dream big about policymaking, and then I'm really happy that this paid off. And at the same time, I would say that study hard, because you're not going to be able to manage without studying. Just imagination alone cannot drive your academic pursuits.
Right.
Yes, and that's the idea behind studying economics. I mean, I'm obviously in love with the subject. I want to carry forward with the idea of policymaking, evidence-led policymaking, perhaps incorporate a little bit of machine learning into that research, and carry through.
Okay, well, I want to ask you this, okay, because you were possibly having a pretty good salary in Germany after your master's, right?
Right.
And so there's a huge opportunity cost of becoming a graduate student again. And that's a decision that's a hard one. So what went into your decision making? You have income loss for 4 years. And how, or do you have enough savings to let you not feel so poor? I mean, how did you make that decision?
So it was not a very difficult decision, Dr. Mathur, I would say, because at the end of the day, I have always dreamt of doing my PhD, right? And it has always been a motivating factor. And I think part of the reason why I was working in Germany is because I finished my second master's way too soon, and the application windows were not open yet. So I was living out my time in Germany until I got through the universities, and I did get through a couple of American universities, because this was what my plan initially was, right? To do a policy-led master's from Germany, and then I would fly to the US. And I did get a couple of very good offers from the US, couple of US universities, but then I did not even know about Luxembourg at that point of time. So my supervisor, who was my thesis supervisor in Germany, she sent me an email one morning saying, "Adrij, have a look at this university called University of Luxembourg." I'm like, okay, so what part of Germany is it in? Right? And she said, "No, it's not a part of Germany. It's a country by itself." I'm like, "Oh, okay, fine. I'm not gonna take it, but I'm gonna humor you." So I delved deep into the not just the website, but also the research prospects of the professors who were there and the project that were being carried on at the university, and I really felt a connect with what they want to do, especially when I got to know about the collaborations that they have. Like, for example, Luxembourg has stellar collaborations with IAB, whose data I'm working with right now. IAB is the foremost provider of German data. It has collaborations with numerous such research centers, scientific organizations that I could leverage for my research. And I had to, with a very confused mind, I had to decline the offers from the US, the 3 or 4 offers that I got from the US. And I said, no, I'm probably going to go. And I spoke to a lot of people. I spoke to professors, my peers from both sides of the Atlantic. I spoke to people from the US, I spoke to people from Canada, and they all said that, you could really work well in the US environment. And it's always been your plan to fly to the US for your research. And I said, you know what, I'm probably going to do a double down here, and I'm going to stay back in Europe. And it's also because I was working on German data. My research is very Eurocentric, although it is labor. And now I have plans to move towards India to understand India better, and to work with South Asian economies in general. But my research has predominantly been dominated by European countries. It had been, if it's Luxembourg, it's Luxembourg. It has been Germany before, it's Germany right now. And in the future, I'm also planning to work with the French government on labor markets, right? So I think that's the reason why it's not a pecuniary loss, because this was my plan all along, and now I'm living it. At the same time, I have to say, the Luxembourgish government pays you really well. So I have not faced, but that's a side note. That's really a footnote, right? That's not something I want to underscore here.
No, but they do give you good money for a PhD, it seems, because you're teaching actually. So you are not just pure research, you're teaching, so that pays you well. Okay.
Well, that's the US. That's the US model. But then, fortunately enough, I don't get paid for teaching. I get paid to be here. Just
Okay, all right.
I teach because I like to, and
okay.
I will keep on teaching. So
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else you want to add here?
Yes, I would very quickly want to touch upon the idea of how economics, and as you said, right, economics and computer science are going towards a coalition, and perhaps it's an interesting way of looking at economics, not from a social science perspective, but more of a computer science, in a computer science paradigm. So, and if you don't mind, I would also like to ask you a question regarding this idea.
Good. Yeah, let's see if I can answer it.
I just want to ask, how you feel about this changing, landscape of economics, and what do you feel that economics is all about? What is the adda of economics in today's time?
Well, okay, all right. The core, or the adda, remains thinking like an economist. Okay, but after thinking, you have to, unless you are really just a superstar thinker, okay, for anybody else, you have to deal with data. The moment you are dealing with data in whatever way you want to deal with it, then you really need to understand how the computer science works and what is coming out of it. So the moment you are in data science, basically, what is now called data science, which is a correct term, because now the data is so much that really the constraint is not the availability of data. The constraint is your ability to handle it, right? And so, in the old days, you had to scrounge around to get data. And so you were limited by that, and you had to scrounge around to get computing power. So you were limited by that. But today, those are not constraints. Okay, if the computing power is cheap and is massive. I will give you an example. I was one of the pioneers in buying an IBM PC. Nobody used to. It was twice my monthly income at that time, 1984, and it cost $5,000. Broke my bank, and it had 2 floppy disks, which was considered a great luxury, and a 10 megabyte hard disk, and a very, very a processor that you needed a separate co-processor for mathematics. I didn't have that time it had just come out. And you couldn't even print Greek letters with that. Okay, so that's long back. But today, and so, what data could you handle? Couldn't. And in the mainframe you used to work with, it would take hours to get your turnaround time. But today, none of that is important. Today, you can handle, I would say today's PCs are 1 million times faster and better than what I paid for, and you probably pay $500. 1 million, I'm not joking.
Absolutely.
Okay, because the hard disks are now what, easily gigabytes. I mean, gigabyte was not, the MIT mainframe had a memory of 1 megabyte for everybody. 1
That would be enough,
megabyte,
right?
the RAM was 1 megabyte. So today you have to learn to deal with data. Okay, it's not computer science. It's basically to deal with data and how to process the data. So whether you are in machine learning is what? Machine learning is not thinking like Socrates, no? Machine learning is what to do with the data, right? It's not
Right.
like writing religious tract or a philosophical tract or something like Karl Marx, right? It's not like Adam Smith or Karl Marx. It's not machine learning. Machine learning is nothing but how to use computers to handle data, right? And
Right.
instead of you telling the machine, it figures out on its own how to do it a better job. It's okay, fine. It's really necessary to use the available technology, right? So I think it's a necessary part of economics that you learn to, if you deal with data. If you don't deal with, as you said, if you base with evidence-based policy, well, evidence-based is just a fancy word. It's data-based.
It's data. Absolutely. I mean,
It's just data-based. We like to, throw around these jargon words. It makes it sound like it's a court of law. Okay, there's no evidence here. You're not following the rules of evidence in a court of law. They're quite different. It's just
right.
data-based policy making and you are, in a way, we have imported the medical system to have RCTs. And, of course, we should keep in mind that the medical tests themselves are not all that clever and sophisticated. Okay,
That's
because
true.
in the medical tests you have the most productive medicine in terms of benefit cost is the placebo.
Right.
So we really, in the medical system, there's no cost, and yet some patients improve. You just tell them. So you have to be careful with the volume of data, what you are getting out of it. And in that sense, you need to still to be an economist.
Absolutely.
That you have tons of data and you have machine learning and you are swallowed by the excitement of all this. But does it in the end conform to any reasonable hypothesis or theory? That still remains the thinking job. So I'm happy that there is this. And in my own professional consulting world, which is not anywhere related to what most economists do, there is a lot of big data. I don't
Right.
handle it because there are younger people who can handle it better. But yeah, we have to move with it. We just cannot simply ignore it. So that's my answer. But
Absolutely. No, I think that's a wonderful answer. It kind of sums up what we, as a group of economists, would think like, and that's the most important takeaway that even our professors would also talk to us about.
yeah,
And at the
okay.
end of the day, it's all about economics, and data is just there for the augmentation of conclusions.
Yeah. I'd like to say that being an economist often means like thinking from first principles. People say, think out of the box, but I think the term out of the box is itself outdated. Okay, I would say think from first principles, using the technologies and data that you have. And the data do enable you to have a better perspective than lack of data. Okay,
That's
so
true.
the more the data you have, the better off you are. And but never stop thinking from first principles as to, or let us put it in our term, global optimization. All this is nonsense, out of the box and this and that. It's just
Yes.
global optimization
Right.
with the available data that you have. It's global optimization, that you think of the policy you have to define the objective function,
Right.
Including the risk parameters. Then you can have your marriage between data coming to you via all these fancy terms and economic thinking, and proceed to make more meaningful conclusions and analysis and make it work. So yeah, I'm happy that this is the way it is. But I would not say that it is breathtakingly different.
No, definitely not.
Okay, I would just say it's an evolution along the chain of more technology and more data availability, and the ability to work with that. That I think is great. But I would say the ability to think shouldn't go away.
No, that's absolutely right. And I think at this point of time, if I may add like a very small point, there's a lot of noise around. I have, in the process of sifting through the pages of machine learning and this newfound ideas of causal inference, have discovered a lot of noise amidst a lot of researchers about what this new state of the art could bring forward. And I think that is just what it is. It's noise. And we're just waiting for the optimal time for the dust to settle so that we could fundamentally find out whether or not we need it to begin with. Because so far, economics was doing fine without the advent of machine learning. And then, as you very correctly pointed out, it's just a more sophisticated version of doing statistics with the data that has always been around us for the better part of this 19th or the 20th century.
Yeah.
I think it's that at this point of time, what a lot of people ought to be doing is to figure out where the real deal is, where the meat is, and where the bones are.
Yeah.
And once we find that skeletal purpose, then we could proceed with using this and trying to figure out where to use it, and trying to also look at the opportunities where we could avoid using it and go back to the basics. Because at the end of the day, economics is just about how to make the basics go forward.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to add here?
Oh, no, that's more or less about it. But
okay, so Adrij, let's end it here today. Maybe we catch up with you in a year to see
definitely
whether you are still doing your PhD or seduced by something else. Who knows? All right, let's catch up then. Till then, let's say bye to the viewers. I'll be back with another young person or an expert soon. Bye.
Bye, Dr. Mathur.